I'm going to call this meeting of the Knoxville Regional Transportation Planning Organization to order for January 24th, 2024. The first order of business is please for everyone at this table to introduce themselves. We do have a quorum, by the way, but let's go ahead and please introduce ourselves.
Don Walker with Blount County.
Megan Brooks, City of Alcoa.
Dallas Yarman, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Amber Scott Kelso, City Administrator with Lenore City.
Brian Boone, City of Maryville Engineering Public Works, representing Mayor Andy White.
Jeff Harris, Mayor of City of Loudon.
Doug Burton, TPO Coordinator.
Glenn Jacobs, Knox County Mayor. I'm sitting in for Chairwoman Frank, who can't be here today.
Good morning, India Kincannon, Knoxville Mayor.
Justin Biggs, ETDD.
Isaac Thorne, Knoxville Area Transit.
Terry Hill, Knox County Commission Chair.
Zach Coleman, Federal Highway Administration.
Troy Ebert, TDOT Region 1 Long Range Planning.
James Temple, Sevier County.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone on Zoom participating on Zoom? Okay, great. Thank you. Also, any amendments to the agenda? None. And finally, you will find in your packet a sheet with the list of commonly used acronyms in case you need to follow along like I often do. Okay, the first formal order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting of December 20th, 2023. Those are in your packet and have been sent to you. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Then next is a motion to approve a resolution to adopt the 2020-2024 safety performance measure targets. Mike, you're going to talk about that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this is an action item for your consideration today. So annually, we come to you with the performance measure for safety targets that are done by TDOT. Just some quick background on performance measurement, since some of you are new to the TPO since we've done this last year. This is actually the 7th year of adopting these targets, though. But transportation performance management is something Federal Highway has promoted, starting with the MAP 21 legislation in 2014 and then codified in 2017 with actual measures. All this is tied to the funding sources for, better transparency of how the federal funds are affecting the performance of the transportation system. So very important in that aspect to see how we're doing with the federal funds used. These all tie in with 7 specific national goal areas. They're listed here on this slide: safety, infrastructure, congestion, reliability, freight movement, environmental sustainability, and reduced project delivery delays. The 6 ones up, first 6 there are tied into 3 categories of PM1, 2, and 3. So safety is by itself with PM1. That's what we're discussing today. Again, it's set annually. The PM2 and 3 are done in a 4-year target. We did those last year, and you might hear about them next year. You have an opportunity at the 2-year midpoint to adjust those targets. So safety targets are codified in the regs. They're actually 5 separate measures here you can see on this slide for number of fatalities, the fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles, number of serious injuries and serious injury rate, and then finally the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So these are done on a 5-year average to kind of smooth out the numbers from year to year. Targets are met if you're less than 4 out of those 5 measures, either less than the target or better than the baseline. So TDOT sets these targets by August of the previous year, and then the MPOs across the state have 180 days or by February 27th to either support the state's target or we are able to set our own numerical target. So on that chart, you can see that unfortunately each of those target areas is increasing relative to the baseline. That's kind of the way TDOT's looked at it, is the reality of the situation, projecting forward what's going on. I have a couple slides that show that here. So
before you leave this slide, just do the non-motorized fatalities, is that also part of the total fatalities and it's just broken out?
Yes, no, it is combined. It's part of that number. It's hard to discern that exactly because the non-motorized one is a combination of both fatalities and serious injuries. In your packet, I should have mentioned there is information about this in attachment number 3A that TDOT provides. In there, they do break that out separately, the fatalities and serious injuries comprising that non-motorized number there. So one thing I should also mention, with the latest federal transportation authorization, there is a stipulation now that states set constant or improving targets. However, apparently there is a phase-in period of that was not required this past year, but it's likely that we'll see in the following years that these targets will no longer be able to be set as an increasing number, and I'm not sure exactly of how that is working. But we work with TDOT. They have a working group that discusses these. That'll be starting up again this year, leading up to when they do their final numbers, sort of the middle part of the year. I don't know, Zach, if you have any on what I've just said there. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
I think you summed it up. I think we're here to work with TDOT and the MPOs to kind of move through the process and kind of see how it all shakes out.
There's some different philosophies, whether you set aspirational numbers. Obviously, nobody wants to see these numbers increasing. TDOT's kind of taken the standpoint that we are seeing in a state like ours where population is increasing and vehicle miles travel increasing, and the reality of the situation on infrastructure improvements, those take a number of years to implement sometimes. There's other factors which at the federal level are being looked at. It's not just we can't go improve an intersection and bring the number down at an exact number that we can calculate. There's a lot of factors going into this problem. So this is the actual numbers here. I know there's a lot of information on this slide, but the blue is the year-to-year number. You can see it's kind of steady back to 2008, but then since 2018, this dramatic increase has been occurring. I've also plotted vehicle miles traveled. While there has been an increase here, the number was relatively flat during that part of that increase. So we're seeing these outpace the increase of vehicle miles of travel in terms of the fatalities. Like especially notable is 2020 with COVID, where we had a reduction of travel, but still an increase of fatalities. So what TDOT does is they look at that, basically do a linear projection. The yellow numbers are what they projected if that trend continued there, and set the target based on that. I am happy to say the 2023 actual number was a bit less than what they projected. Again, they're setting these targets in the middle of the year, projecting forward. So we were at 1327. That's the preliminary number for 2023. They projected 1394. So hopefully this will continue to come down here. Do you have a question? Sure.
Before we leave that slide, so 1394 is the number of serious injury.
This is traffic fatalities statewide. That's what they running the calculation basically of what's the percent increase they've been seeing over the last 4 years or so, projecting that forward. That's what they said, nothing else, causing any change. This is what the trend line is telling us. So that's where they're saying the target would be based on. Again, they're just, having to forecast two numbers for 2023 and 2024 that comprise this 5-year target average. It's a lot of math.
But even on the last slide, the rate is important because obviously, not obviously, but sometimes if the population increases, then
correct,
then absolute numbers increase of everything, deaths, births, everything. So, but the rate, this doesn't reflect the rates.
Right.
No. But still, it's really, really high and trending in a horrible direction.
Definitely. The one thing that this has done is really brought more attention to this, I think, is to show how staggering these numbers are and the rate of increase we've been seeing over the past several years. But you're right about the rate, because in the past, what we would see is fatalities would tend to stay pretty similar, but miles of travel are increasing. So you would expect the numbers to kind of correlate. So fortunately, the rate has usually been dropping over time. If you go back to the 50s, it's something like 6-7 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles. We're at 1.4 roughly now. So if you can imagine if that rate was still continuing, we'd be having 10,000 fatalities or so. But this latest trend is definitely troubling, and I definitely don't like to see that target for the rate being in an increasing number. So it's, again, bringing attention to this, that things need to improve. The one other data slide for statewide numbers I'll show is the non-motorist serious injuries and fatalities. Again, that's a combination of those two. This one has increased at a higher rate even than the previous one I showed. And TDOT projected out I think 11% roughly year-to-year increase for how the target was set, which to me, that's dramatically high numbers when you're getting up to 871 for 2024. Fortunately, again, I got the preliminary 2023 numbers from the state highway safety office. And so the actual number for 2023 is right now saying 643. So definitely much less than what had been projected there. So that, obviously not good that we have anything above zero, but we're trending a little bit lower last year.
So just to make sure I understand, that means 643 pedestrians and bikers were killed on state streets.
No, it's all public roads.
All public roads,
Yes. Statewide.
Statewide.
And it's serious injuries included in that number.
Oh, it's SI serious injury.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not just fatalities. So.
Does that include the scooters?
That's a question I might have to ask Federal Highway. That's non-motorist. Sometimes the scooter, if it has a motorized capability, it gets a little fuzzy.
I'm talking about the little,
Right, like the
electric.
two-wheelers.
yeah, the electric
Yes,
scooters.
yes.
I'm not sure. It does, Sonia. We have our safety engineer, Sonia here, Sonia Baker.
It should be included.
Okay.
The only thing that's excluded is the motorcyclists.
I know motorcyclists are not included in that number, but sometimes there's the vulnerable road user category, which may include the scooters, but we can double check that. So, we have considered, that we do have the option to set a local target. And now as we'll talk about later on the agenda today, we have adopted a regional roadway safety action plan. I know the city of Knoxville has adopted a Vision Zero plan. In the regional TPO regional roadway safety plan, it calls for a goal of reducing fatalities by 2/3, 66% by the year 2045. What that translates to is a 5% reduction each year moving forward, if you assume that starts after 2023. So I've plotted that number here on this chart. We were at 114. Again, this is all preliminary data that we get for the TPO planning area. And this is the old planning area. As you recall, our last meeting, we just adopted a new planning area. So the software program needs to be updated to include that new geography, but it didn't change a considerable amount. So where we were at would be 108, and we could set a target off of that. Again, the target would show an increase. However, because of the math involved and how the 5-year average works out, you lose some numbers on this end and add that. So even though a 1-year reduction actually translates into a 5-year target that's increasing. But in summary here, though, what we've done the past 6 times is we just adopt the statewide targets, and this is done through that resolution in your packet, attachment 3B, basically saying the TPO agrees to plan and program projects that support the state's established targets. Some other reasons how we've done, or why we go that route, is that we're not directly evaluated on these targets by Federal Highway. I mentioned that software program. TDOT has a relatively new platform available to everyone, basically, to analyze the crashes called AASHTO. We need to update that with our new planning area geography. And even with that, with our planning area being partial counties, it makes it very challenging for these targets to set at the TPO level. And then the last thing I'll mention is we are planning to establish safety goal tracking, other performance measure dashboards in conjunction with our new long-range mobility plan. We'll be posting that on our website, tracking these numbers as to our best of our ability, in the region here. And we have the Regional Roadway Safety Action Plan also that we're going to be tracking progress for. So that's overview of that. If there are any other questions, I can try to answer. Otherwise,
Yeah, I was wondering if you know of any TPOs that have adopted a Vision Zero for the region, because it is a little hard to swallow. Like,
Right.
oh, we're okay with 180
right?
deaths because it's not 190. Like, I know that it's ambitious to say zero, but
Yeah.
but are there any TPOs around the country that you know of
Oh.
that have adopted a Vision Zero, like beyond just a smaller, more regional approach?
I know the Florida DOT has, I think, set everything to zero. Some people kind of view that a little bit. They're not actually looking at the data and trying to set a realistic target. But again, anything over zero is hard to stomach in terms of this. But I'm more familiar statewide at the MPO level. There's 11 MPOs in Tennessee. The only other one I'm aware of that has done a local target is the Nashville MPO. And what they've done is kind of the same thing what I was showing. They have I think a goal of a 2%, or I don't know if Zach is familiar or Sean.
2% decrease every single year
Yeah.
until their MTP, I think 2045.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a similar kind of thing. They'll plot out a straight line, 2% decrease and use that. So that, I don't know if they do that for every single of the 5 measures or just fatalities, but they also comprise entire counties in the Nashville MPO, so it's a little bit easier for all those factors. The vehicle miles traveled, again, for a partial county would be a separate calculation that would take some effort to do. So anyway, Nashville is the only other one I'm aware of that has tried to do a local target for these. But
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mike. And do I hear a motion to approve the resolution to adopt? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Mike. Now, Craig is going to walk us through an amendment to the Transportation Planning Work Program. Craig?
I am. Thank you. And this one is going to be pretty easy. First of all, there is no math. And it also touches on the situation a little bit from Mike's presentation, speaking about partial counties. And what this is really is a clarification of an item in the work program. Regional pavement management is a project that we had in the past, collecting pavement data and standing up pavement management systems here in the region. We had 5 partners that participated in that project last time. You have to continually collect that data, so we have an upcoming project to offer data recollection for participating agencies, as well as other regional partners being able to jump in on that. And one thing that, as we got ready to issue an RFP for that, we started to look at it and we realized that data collection in the last instance, Blount County, is partially outside of our planning area. And we wanted to clarify that in order to properly service those agencies and collect full network information so that they can monitor their full network, that would require spending TPO, LSTBG money area outside of the planning area. In consultation with Federal Highway, we got a clarification that that is acceptable, but we would need to kind of clarify that language in our work program, as well as for this body to give assent to, again, spending that funding outside of the planning area is something that we want to get overt approval to do. So what this does is basically clarify with the red language here that data collection for this pavement management system may occur outside the TPO planning area, and also to support that full network collection. Last time that was Blount County, but that opportunity would also exist for our other regional partners that are partial counties. Of course, with the cities that are in the area, as we've talked about with the planning area discussion, if we touch part of a city or town, then that full area is taken in. So really this only applies to counties. And that is my feedback on that, and I guess I'm open for questions.
I will add that in our the executive board bylaws, it does allow for us to spend funds outside of the planning area, but it requires that we at least approve it by a 2/3 vote. So it's a little bit more than just the simple majority. So if y'all do decide to go ahead forward with it, I want to be sure that's noted in the minutes.
Any questions for Craig or Doug? Okay. Thank you, Craig. Now, is there a motion to approve this amendment?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a report from our friends with the federal government. And Doug, I'm going to allow you to introduce, please.
Okay, every 4 years we have to go through a certification review, and that's going to be occurring this week, and we have several of our federal and state partners here. So they're going to give you a little bit of an overview, and I want to first introduce Sean Santaya with the Federal Highway Administration. He's going to kick it off and introduce his teammates.
Hey, good morning, board. My name is Sean Santaya. I'm the acting Deputy Division Administrator for our Federal Highway Administration Tennessee Division based out of Nashville. As Doug alluded to, we are here to present on our TMA certification review. And what that is Congress charges the Federal Highway Administration and FTA with conducting sort of periodic check-ins of how the planning process is going in each of our largest urbanized areas. We do this because we recognize these areas are complex. There's a lot going on in managing the transportation systems, and the decisions that come out of bodies like this can be very impactful towards safety, economy, resiliency, a whole array of different factors that inform our quality of life and the health of our citizens and our communities. So how we do that is we have brought together a team. Zach is going to be leading this review, so he'll be coming up and presenting on the actual logistics of the review. But one of the things that we do like to hear is we want to hear from members like yourself, the participants in the process, the decision makers, those that guide the process. We want to hear from you. How do you feel like you have the information that you need to participate? Do you feel like you are comfortable with where the process is going? How engaged are you? Are your citizens and your communities engaged and aware of the process? And we use all of that to inform. Again, to inform this review. So we'll be sitting down with Doug and the TPO staff over the course of today and tomorrow. We will be reaching back out to y'all for a listening session that Zach will talk about. But again, we just wanted to reinforce, we want to hear from y'all. We want to get that feedback, and then we will be coming back at a later date to present on the findings of our review. So we have put together a team. I'm going to introduce Zach come up in a second here. He'll be leading the review, but did want to introduce a couple of other members of my staff here. Melanie Murphy is another planning specialist in our office, and then Sonia Baker is our safety engineer in our office as well. We have involved our civil rights specialists. We have our federal transit partners involved. Our environmental protection agency partners are involved in this. This is a very multidisciplinary review. So with that, Zach, why don't you come up and present on the details of it? Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Sean really summed up most of the presentation there. So what is it? Oh, sorry. So what is a federal certification review? Sean hit the nail on the head. We're here to kind of talk about the 4-year required review to certify the metropolitan planning process. So what we really want is to kind of hear, it's a tailored risk-based approach. So we're not reviewing every single thing that the TPO is working on. We're just kind of looking at, what's changed since the last review, what's working, what's not. And that's kind of where the input from the TPO is really important, and from all of y'all. Throughout the entire process. So I'm going to take a look at that, and that really impacts the report and kind of what to look forward to for the next 4 years. Why is it important? It creates kind of the framework for collaboration, right? So it decides how federal funding is spent. It kind of helps the MPO prioritize regional goals. If you know something's not working, you want to focus on that. You want to make sure that it's functioning properly. You want to make sure everybody's involved in the process. Who's involved? As Sean said, it's the MPO. It's the the policy board, the committees, the technical committee, the transit operators, local jurisdictions, citizens, interest groups, and of course, FTA and FHWA. Here's the federal team. It's us. We have our partners from EPA, the USDO, and the FTA as well. So it's a UST, DOT, and EPA kind of multidisciplinary team. What will be reviewed? So we're really looking for that 3C approach through the planning process, making sure everybody's involved. It's continuing, cooperative, comprehensive, and then making sure that each of these 10 federal planning factors are kind of, integrated well throughout all the planning processes, throughout, the planning products that are produced, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So all of these kind of feed into the TPO's planning process. So these are the big ones. We look at the UPWP, the outreach plan, the MTP, congestion management process, the TIP, and obviously, the conformity, air quality conformity. So all of those are kind of, it's a feedback loop, right? They all kind of influence each other. What works, the additional studies, the UPWP, CMP, MTP TIP. We're kind of looking at, how public involvement, how everybody's involved in the process and how well it's working, and kind of tracking the success of those work products. So the outcome of the review, the final report is due April 8th. You'll have a chance to kind of see the draft as we're working on it. So it could be fully certified, certified subjective to corrective actions, or certified for use only on certain construction projects. So that's a limited certification. I don't think there's ever not been a full certification here. So we're, working towards that full certification for sure. So next steps, obviously, today and tomorrow we'll be here talking with, the TPO staff and transit service providers. It'll be the team here, some member from FTA, some other members from Federal Highways. We'll have Mark Corrigan here and TDOT as well. So we'll just be kind of having a conversation, talking through the planning process, seeing what, hearing from everybody. Oh, sorry. Public engagement, we're targeting for, I think, the first week of February. Second week? Okay. So we're trying to piggyback on the MTP public engagement, but not take away from it. So we really kind of want to hear from members of the public, see what their understanding of the planning process is, see, what their take on it is. And then obviously the certification is due April 8th. So you'll have that report and any actions that come with it. So in the report, we'll also give commendations, recommendations, or corrective actions. Mostly it'll be commendations and recommendations. So we'll see what comes out of the conversations that we have. So what we like from you, Sean talked about it a little bit. We want to hear your comments on what's working, what's not. We kind of want to hear your feedback on, how the process works. So all those comments that we receive will be kind of summarized in the report, and we'll use it to kind of influence our recommendations and evaluate the process. So it's really important. I know Doug sent out the email. We have a listening session coming up January 30th. It's office hours. We'll be there. It's open forum. There's no, set presentation or anything. It's a time for comments and to have conversations. So kind of just opening the floor to everybody to join us for that listening session, which will be virtual. It'll be open for 90 minutes, so 10 a.m. to 11:30 on January 30th. Y'all are welcome to join and talk to us. And that's it. So looking forward to, meeting with everybody today and carrying on the process. So thank you.
Any questions from the board?
I sent the invite out late yesterday, so you may not have had a chance to see it in your inbox. That it has the calendar invite, and it also has the virtual information where you can click and join. So,
yeah, it's a Teams link. So
yeah, so look for that in your inbox.
I've been seeing a lot of people accepting, so very encouraging. So thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is an overview of TDOT's new 10-year project plan, which will be presented by TDOT staff.
Good morning, everybody. Y'all know me, Troy Everett, Long Range Planning. I have lots of friends here with me today. Y'all know Dexter and Steve Borden. Steve runs Region 1. Dexter is over PD and kind of changed the positions a little bit as we've been working through our epic changes. With me today also is, of course, y'all know Matt Meservy, who's typically here and supporting this MPO and what we do, but Stacy, my supervisor, is also here with us today, and of course Michelle's with us. She serves on the technical board for us. Did I get everybody? Christy's here. So Christy got the other half of Dexter's job when they split his job up. So, and Christy's been doing this for a long time with us. So we have the people here to answer your questions. Okay. So last time in December, this document was rolled out to you on the 18th. We had our meeting on the 20th, and it came out, and the commissioner came out and gave information specifically about projects and trying to give you all a better window of what actually our long-term game is. Because we come through, we rank projects, you look at your 3-year goals, this is what we're shooting for. Every year they come through, the legislature approves year 1, we have this money we know we're getting to spend. Well, we're wanting to make it much more transparent so everyone understands exactly what we're going through and what we're looking at. Good and bad. Great parts about it is we actually have a better idea what's going on. Bad part, it's not all great news, but we're working through what we have with what we have, with the information that we've been given. So there's a box here to scan. If you have not seen this, I highly encourage you to read it. There is a lot of very, very good detailed information in this plan. Here in a moment, I'll introduce Dexter. He'll come up and start going through some of these. Last time you all went through project by project, received project updates, so we're not going to do that, but we did want to come back to make sure that you all had an opportunity to ask questions. I do have 2 questions for you all before we start on this. Did anyone watch the House Transportation Committee yesterday? Really good questions. A lot of Region 1 specific questions came out of that. It's not posted yet. The video is not on there, but I would highly encourage you all to look at that. And then this afternoon or this morning at 11:30, the Senate Transportation Board will also be meeting with the commissioner. I would expect very similar information, but they're asking questions. The legislature, they are coming through and asking very specific questions. Where's this project? What's going on? And we're going through and trying to provide that information for you. So we want you all to have the right answers when you get that phone call saying, hey, why isn't this being done? Or what's going on here? We're trying to help you all through that as well, because we're in this together to do all this. With that, I'll go ahead and kick it over here to Dexter and let him go through and do it. Do you want the questions during, or do you want them to wait? Or all right, so if you'll hold your questions towards the end, then we'll interrupt them at that point.
All right. Good morning. It's good to see everyone again today. To run through this presentation real quick and get to the question opportunity, and I'm sure Steve will come up and help us with that. To Troy's point, the 10-year plan was released on December 18th, and the goal there was to provide a plan that outlined our commitment to project delivery. As in our past, we still show projects a lot with a PE, right of way, and construction in those 3 phases. So we've laid out a plan that will show you how we will work through projects in that manner. There were guiding principles to getting us to a plan that we were ready to release to the General Assembly, and the guiding principles, the first one there is to develop a 10-year physically constrained plan where what gets started gets finished. And that's the key principle right there. What gets started gets finished. So we will only be working on projects that are in a plan. More specifically, the 3-year plan, but the 10-year plan will guide our 3-year plan and what we were working on through that process. It prioritizes funding for the system preservation as well. What you are probably aware is we have capital investment, which is what this 10-year plan tackles, but then we also have investments in our system preservation, which is our resurfacing, bridge replacements and repairs, and those kinds of things, snow and ice removal, all that falls in our preservation process. We also we're looking at how can we put together a plan that balances urban and rural investments across the state. We wanted to fully leverage all federal, state partnership and private-public partnerships to help with the TMA funding and deliver the most projects possible. So then we also want to put TMA funding to work as quickly as possible. So our methodology was first and foremost, how do we take this money and address our current 3-year plan? The current 3-year plan had been budgeted on estimates that were not fully correct. So we went back and looked at those scopes to understand what is the full cost of implementing the 3-year plan. It comes out that it was $519 million. So that leads us to another conversation, right? So what is the full cost of the 10-year plan? On our traditional transportation dollars, we have about $1.2 billion a year that goes towards capital investments and in this realm. So you figure that over a 10-year period, that's $12 billion, right? So the TMA was a $3.3 billion investment or infusion of dollars into this plan as well. $300 million of that went to state aid funding. So that $300 million went to the counties and came off of the $3.3 billion. So that's easy math, right? We got $12 billion and $3 billion. That's $15 billion over the next 10 years. So you're looking at the $519 million to get the 3-year plan back in line financially off of that number. So then we started going through the prioritization process, and what you see here is kind of a sideways funnel, right? You got the new prioritization process on top, the choice lane studies on the bottom, and all the projects that are coming into the funnel to be analyzed to see what's going to come out into the 10-year plan. You can kind of see the little orange balls are proportional to the amount of projects that we had addressing those different areas. But we had to analyze all of those projects, whether it be urban congestion, improved active acceleration, rural interstate widening, state of good repair, state partnership projects, and economic development type projects going into the funnel. The prioritization process, we'll go to the next page and see that. The prioritization process had like 5 goal areas: safety, congestion, economic growth, preservation, and livability and sustainability. And then there were evaluation criteria related to all of those goal areas. Each project was evaluated on those different criteria, and then it got a score. Now, what you would know is congestion is one thing in an urban environment. It's a whole other thing in a rural environment. So the math for a rural project was a little different than it was for an urban project, so that you would have balancing across the state and have projects that can be evaluated on different things. So the score for a rural project would line up against a score for an urban project, but the math that went into making that score was a little different. Let's see. New project evaluation process considered 3 important aspects of prioritization investment, which was project performance, project delivery, and project costs. That also went along with the criteria for the scoring of each individual project. So after we had a score for a project, we also looked at what's the project's performance, how deliverable is it, and what is the project cost. So all those things intertwined to spit out a 10-year plan. Let's see. So again, like I said a few minutes ago, we have roughly 55% of our annual budget going into highway program projects and about 45% going into state of good repair. So outside of the billions of dollars that we talked about for the 10-year plan, you're seeing a similar number going into state of good repair, which is pavement preservation, bridge preservation, ITS, and technologies that help make our system more robust and a lot more efficient. Safety projects and advanced engineering and environmental mitigation, which are things that help us implement projects, capital projects that are more on the other side. again, in the plan, you'll see a map that identifies the location of every project that was identified in the 10-year plan. But you will also see a list of projects on the back end. And I guess this is
I had a couple slides there. I was going to add
I
after you.
think I skated through into the next slide deck. But if you go to the 10-year plan, there'll be a list of projects that more identify the name of the project, where it's at, what county it's in, how much money is attributed to that project, along with the location of that's on this map. With that, I can open the floor for questions.
Let me follow through with a couple slides real quick, and then we can open it up.
Okay.
I may have to ask staff to advance the slides for me. In your packet, we put a color table here where we analyzed the top half of the table is the projects that are in the TDOT 10-year plan. And if you work across, I'm not going to go over this all in detail, but if you work across, it kind of tells you where those projects were planned in our mobility plan and our TIP. So generally, of the projects that are in the 10-year plan, we had them on the books, except for the choice lane study. Some of them may slide forward a little bit or slide back a little bit, but those projects we've got them in our plan and in our TIP. The bottom part are the ones that have been pushed out of the 10-year plan. And I just wanted to go over about 7 or 8 of the ones that were more recent in our plan. Go to that next slide. These are the ones that are getting pushed out. The US I-29 widening, that's Alcoa Highway. This is the one that's out in Maryville, Alcoa to Lamar Alexander to Hall Road. Montville Road in Blount County, that's Montville Station Road to Lamar Alexander Parkway. There's part of it, they're doing several sections of Alcoa Highway, and there's a part in the middle, Alcoa Highway widening from Pellissippi Parkway to south of the Little River County line. That's been pushed out. The Pellissippi Parkway at Oak Ridge Highway or the Solway interchange. The Emery Road project, this is the side where it's from the Gibbs area, from Maynardville Highway out to Tazewell Pike, North Shore Drive and the Kingston Pike intersection. The I-4075 interchange at Campbell Station. This one we thought was approved by the state legislature, but we've not been able to confirm that. Well, a couple of years ago, we got a letter from the commissioner congratulating us on the interchange, and it was in the budget. So that's now been pushed out. And then the Chapman Highway project. Now we show it in our book as one project. TDOT shows it as 7 sections. And I do want to say that last time they said there's still some opportunity. They have other pots of money for safety and operational improvements. So some of those sections may still go forward based on those other parts of funding. And then these are some of the next steps that we're trying to do as staff. We're still working with TDOT to fully understand the impact on the project and our current mobility plan and TIP. We will probably end up having to do some type of revision or amendments to those plans to accommodate the new projects and how they're all scheduled. Now, the 10-year plan still must be passed by the General Assembly. That's why they're having, I guess, those meetings today. Then how much it will change from year to year. They said it'll be updated each year, but we don't know what the impact of that is. We have heard through the grapevine that there are other cities and jurisdictions that are lobbying, the General Assembly and the Commissioner about some of the projects that are out. Whether some will get back in or not, I don't know. Like I said, we do have 2 big concerns about the Campbell Station Road interchange and the missing portion of Alcoa Highway. And then we do applaud TDOT for financially constraining the projects. We all know how great the inflation costs have been over the last few years. But as we're starting our new mobility plan, we're kind of wondering what the impact is on it. That's a 30-year plan, so will that push even more projects out based on these new financial assumptions? And then we would like, from the TPO perspective, we would like a little bit more input in the 10-year plan. I know it came very quickly together for TDOT, but we don't feel like we really had any input into the process. And then when they talk about each year there will be kind of a new year and projects can come back in, we would like to see how all the projects rank, because we think the projects that are ranked highest are the ones that stand a chance more likely to get onto the list. So we need to know what we can be advocating for and make sure we're not advocating for a project that's at the bottom of the ranking. And so we would really like to see those scores when there's a chance for them to present those. So those are that's a little bit from our staff perspective, what we've been thinking about. but I guess we can open up the floor for any questions for the TDOT folks.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for this overview. We've had, just reading in the 10-year plan, there were some surprises, that particularly Chapman Highway, that's been a huge priority for Knoxville and our TPO for many years, because people keep dying. People really are just losing their lives traveling on Chapman Highway, people in their cars, people outside their cars. And, we always say safety's our top concern. Like if it takes them 2 minutes longer to get to their destination, but they arrive alive, that's a win. If someone dies or gets seriously injured as they travel through our region, that should be our top priority. So it is a big concern, and most of the fatal accidents on Chapman Highway, to my knowledge, are inside the city limits, and we want to stop people from dying on Chapman Highway. So I guess I have similar questions to what Doug was just saying about how these priorities were set in the urban and rural. I get it, but I think I care about safety for people who live across the whole state, but we have to sort of focus on where people are getting killed rather than just speed of economic, moving of goods and so forth. So I don't know. I guess I'm going to hear what you have to say, Mr. Borden, about Chapman Highway in particular.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. So certainly with us, safety and part of it, all this it's built, it's got safety components, it does have economic, it has congestion, mobility, it has deliverability. There's a lot of things there. And then of course it's financially constrained. Chapman Highway to date, we've done 4 projects. One was done with resurfacing. We tried to be real creative. One was a legislative type project. 2 were safety. We will continue, as Doug mentioned before, we broke that into bite-sized pieces so that we could financially deliver it. We're going to continue to push to use other funding methods to be able to do each of those pieces. Safety is a big deal. One of the driving forces on Alcoa highways the same way. It had the accident rates, crash rates were extremely high on Alcoa highway. And as we've invested a lot of money, time we're done, it'll be $800 million, close to, in order to deliver that corridor as well. If you get the opportunity, the video is loaded now because I watched it last night. It popped up from yesterday. The financial constraints are tough. Will Reed put up a lot of stats, and our chief engineer, about just the financial impacts of inflation right now in the industry. It has really been historical, the way that's changed. But we will continue to work on Chapman Highway. Our staff is continuing to look at those locations, and like we mentioned before, we have different, so the 10-year plan basically talks about your big legislative projects. There's also bridge projects, always the other maintenance, good repair project, but there's also other projects that are outside of that come out of the safety money. And like I said, the last 2 that we delivered on Chapman Highway that are most recent are out of that money. So we'll continue to pursue that money as well. One thing to remember too is that, we do want to be very accountable for delivering. Our old 3-year plans often with the first year would be, we knew those projects are going, right? They're funded. Years 2 and 3 were not always consistently there. So you would always imagine year 2 always became year 1, right? The next year, but it didn't always happen that way. The way it's set up now, what you see in the 3-year plan, year 2 will become year 1 next year, year 3, and then we'll pull the next one in. Now, when you talk about the 10-year plan, it's not the same as the 3-year plan is going to be this is what we're doing. You'll know the 3 years. The 10-year is more like a roadmap. It doesn't mean that as we revisit it every year, there can be changes within that 10-year as we need to. We always have to adapt to what's going on and retool, not just adding year 11. There could be some other shifting out there further out too as well. We're committed on Chapman Highway, those with safety. We'll continue to do operational improvements as well as we move forward.
Thank you. I had a comment that, it has, Chapman Highway is called a highway and it's a state route, but particularly inside the city limits, there's a ton of new housing going on and there's a lot of people through choice or through necessity who are moving around by bus, who are moving around on foot. We have impaired drivers, we have impaired pedestrians. So to me, one thing to take into account is slowing people down is the way to save lives. And that's the only way to really do that is through design changes, not, adding turn lanes, adding, other pedestrian and safety infrastructure. Speed limits, people always drive as fast as the road will allow. And that is, I think, what is contributing to the high rate of fatal crashes on that highway. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Steve, when we read through the 10-year plan as it was released, I think the language in the plan anticipated that cities and counties would have questions and have concerns, and the plan even goes so far to encourage that dialogue and that interaction between local governments and TDOT. Do you have a preference about how you want those conversations to take place rather than 5 separate smaller conversations? Is there a preference that you have about how we have those conversations?
Well, I would put that back to you. How would you like to do it? I mean, what our plan is to do, and we've been starting to do meetings. Dexter and I've got a calendar full of them, and we're going to have more as we reach out to folks. I'd like to come down and sit down with each of the cities, the towns, the mayors, and all of those people individually. Let's work through what's there, and then look at what we can do. That's sort of my goal and my vision. That each of our partners, that we'll sit around a table together and start looking at what's in there and what other opportunities we have. We're going to be creative. We always have been. We always think that the only solution sometimes may be the big project, but sometimes we can do some really creative things with our staffs when we put our heads together to get operational safety improvements that may not be a $50 million project, but it may be a $5 million project that at least gets us the opportunity to make improvements in the interim. And so, my goal and my commitment to you guys that are around the table is that I'm going to come to see all of y'all. That's our goal. And reach out to me. We'll get our calendars together, and we just want to be a part of sitting down with you guys. I think that works good if we could sit down and talk to y'all as in your community. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Ms. Hill.
Thank you. I think I heard you say that the projected funds over 10 years were $15 billion, and then off of that comes, how much did you say in the 3-year projects that are already in the next 3 years that's already committed to? Wasn't that some number?
What's that?
About $5 billion?
519 million.
Oh, all right. I do understand financial constraints, and it was alarming, that last meeting, just to be blunt. It was very alarming. I'm wondering if some of these projects that appear to be pushed out or perhaps at this moment in time eliminated, I would like to encourage you when you sit down with each of the counties. I'm thinking sometimes when you give an architect or an engineer a project, sometimes they will design a Mercedes, and maybe if forced to relook at it, they can come back with a Toyota Corolla or something.
Yeah, certainly.
So that perhaps some of the things that initially appeared to be pushed out so far, if modifications could be made so that at least, as you said,
absolutely
something could begin. Is that? I'm just asking if you do that, if you will encourage that, if you don't, to try to continue to pass this pie around a little more.
Absolutely. I mean, one, I'd like to say, I think that, I don't know the exact number, but there's 93 projects in the 10, is that right? Without the $3 billion, 47 or 48 of those would not be in there. That looks at the financial. We had $35 billion worth of projects that we identified. And as Dexter pointed out, between the TMA dollars, our regular dollars, that adds up to $15 billion over 10 years.
And I'm,
Yes.
I'm good
But
with
I-
all that.
Yeah.
I get that. I just,
Creativity
you just
is
need to
important.
throw us some hope.
Yeah, well, we are. So I guess, and I will tell you this, and Dexter knows, and Christy, and Amanda as well. We try to be very, very creative in coming up with low cost things. So, for instance, on I-40, right there near Alcoa Highway several years ago, we had a $50 billion project that's not in the 10
Million, not billion.
billion. Yeah, what did I say? Million. Good job. $50 million project, right? It's not in the 10-year plan. It was going to be a while before we could fund it. We went in there with resurfacing lines and striping. We got somewhere around 85 to 90% of the throughput for $2.8 million.
Okay.
So we do a lot of those things, and we do have, so I will say this, that our staff has already been targeting some of the locations that we know that these projects are further out. Okay, what we've been strategizing in the last month or so. Okay, let's look at some areas that we can target and do lower cost, creative. It may not get you all the Mercedes, but I certainly might be able to get a Toyota that can help us bridge the gap for 8 or 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Morgan County, yeah. Yeah, Morgan County's in there, and we're actually doing improvements along that, which is on 62, coming out, out of Oliver Springs. It's a really big job. I'm not going to be able to get it in the 10-year plan, but we've got money to be able to do some safety improvements along 3 intersections that are high crash rates, right? Let's get those fixed, and let's try to at least help the people that use that every day. So,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that's very, just as the mayor said, in my own district, which is just a small portion of Knox County, I had 4 areas seriously impacted, and we're just crushed out there. We're just crushed. So I do appreciate your willingness to revisit.
Anyone else? I'd like to add a comment as well. First of all, I don't know what you guys have against Toyota Corollas. They're fine cars. But, no, point well taken.
They are fine.
They are.
And that's what I'm asking for, something that's just fine.
Sure. No, point well taken. I hope the TDOT keeps in mind that everyone sitting at this table makes decisions based on the information that we're given. So when we're making plans, which costs money, when we're strategizing, which costs money, we're going off assumptions that either have been explicitly or implicitly broadcast to us. Okay, so even if it's even something that's taken off the plan, but we had assumed because of conversations that this would be happening, we're planning around that. In addition, there's a lot of sunk costs on projects. Farragut, I believe, has put $500,000 into the design of Campbell Station Road. And, anytime that any of us put that sort of money into projects and then they're kicked off and then the taxpayers essentially eat that cost is very, very frustrating. So as we're going through this process, and I know you all will, but please keep in mind, it's not just TDOT that's making the decisions that are made there affect all of us. And in some cases, these are projects that we have either promised the public or we have already spent money on as well. And I think that's where so much, at least of my frustration, is coming from. But thank you all so much. Anybody else? Up next is the Safe Streets and Roads for All grants.
Yeah, I'm going to do a quick introduction here to highlight some good news here. The region was awarded some funding under this discretionary grant program through Federal Highway Administration called Safe Streets and Roads for All, or SS4A for short. It's a very unique program that actually goes one of the very few, if only, federal fund programs that goes directly to the MPOs or local jurisdictions instead of funneling through TDOT like normal. So this is assigned $5 billion over the life of IIJA, or the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. We're in the second round, we applied for implementation funding. And the city of Knoxville was awarded $8 million. John Livengood's here to give you a quick overview of that project. And the region also received some additional planning funds that I'll talk about, as well as the next round of funding, some information. So turn it over to John.
Hello, I'm John Livengood. I work for City of Knoxville Transportation Engineering. Just to give a little background, over the last past year or so, the city and TPOe and regional partners both developed some Vision Zero action plans. And we finished those in June of last year, which allowed us to apply for the Safe Streets for All grant. Which we were just awarded in December. We got an $8 million grant, which is going to allow us to do $10 million of projects. Some of those are construction projects. Some of those are studies. I'm just going to run through a little what we're going to do. First, we're going to do a speed management plan. We realize that speeding is a significant contributor to severe injuries and deaths on our roads. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at most of our high injury network in the city and kind of take a more contextual approach, what's really around the street, and use that to better make recommendations for speeds on our streets. The city also has a bicycle facilities plan that was put together back in 2015. What we are going to do, we're going to update that plan. We're going to have a more protected bike lane focus. We're going to also have a focus on intersections, so quick build intersection improvements, as intersections are usually one of the locations where most conflicts happen with bicycle traffic. We are also going to produce a public dashboard, and this is to provide transparency for how the city is moving through our Vision Zero plan. But also the dashboard is going to have some kind of behind the scenes ability for city staff to analyze data and to better determine where most effective projects will be. We also realize that projects alone are not going to change safety in the city. We also need to change behaviors. So we are going to have a strong public engagement campaign that's going to really focus on speeds, distracted driving, and bike ped safety. We're also going to do feasibility studies. So this is going to specifically look at our high injury network identified in the Vision Zero plan. And these are going to look for quick build projects. So not the $10 million projects, but something we can get on the ground in a couple years on our most dangerous streets. And the last study we're going to do is what we call MUTCD engineering studies. And this is going to look at intersections where there's been a high crash rate for left turn and U-turns. And so it's going to look at, see how we can improve those with protected left turns. As far as construction projects, Magnolia Avenue was identified in our Vision Zero action plan as a high injury network, and there's 3 intersections that we're going to do improvements to, and these are specifically to improve pedestrian safety. We've had a lot of pedestrian crashes and some fatalities. So we're going to look at shortening crossing distance, pedestrian refuges, rapid flashing beacons, just really trying to do design changes to the road to make pedestrian safety a little improved. Another project we're doing, which is what we are already designing, is what is called the Broadway Streetscape Project. And this connects to, fills in a missing gap in the First Creek Greenway network. This project occurs between Cecil Avenue and Woodland Avenue, so it's going to create a greenway along that stretch. This also has one of the busiest bus stops in the city, so this project will help out with people taking the bus. We're going to do intersection improvements to 3 intersections within the corridor to help pedestrians cross the road. And then the final project, Woodland Avenue Complete Street, which is adjacent to the Broadway project, that provides a road diet on what today is a 4-lane road. So what we're doing, we're going to reduce that to 2 lanes of traffic and a center turn lane, but then add bike facilities between the existing First Creek Greenway up to existing bike lanes on Woodland Avenue. Then we're also going to do some pedestrian improvements by adding a sidewalk and then improving the existing mid-block pedestrian crossing right in front of the high school. So adding a refuge and flashing beacons for that. And if there's not any questions, that's my quick overview on our Safe Streets for All grant.
Well, thank you, John, for that overview. I just wanted to say, obviously I'm thrilled that we got awarded this grant. I had a chance to meet with Secretary Buttigieg in DC last week, and there's more money available to our region, and safety is the #1 priority, and saving lives. So, we're going to continue to work to get those funds on the behalf of the city of Knoxville, but I would say as a region, we could continue to apply for more funds and focus on the safety. In particular, it seems like all kinds of fatal crashes tend to disproportionately affect lower income folks, which, we all have plenty of those throughout our region. It's not just in the city. So I would just encourage us as a TPO and as individual municipalities to take full advantage of that. There's another round of Safe Streets for All grants applications due like in February, I think. And that's what Mike is going to talk about. So thank you very much, John. And I think the reason we got this grant is because it complements ongoing efforts, and also because it serves a high school. There's Broadway Towers, Love Towers, our public safety complex, the future Empath Center, which is a mental health facility that's going to serve the entire region, and our busiest bus stop. All those things, I think, were reasons that we got awarded that. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just have a couple quick follow-up slides to talk about the next round and some other factors at the TPO regional level. One thing I should mention, this funding program, as I mentioned, $5 billion over 5 years. This is because, I showed the chart for the Tennessee statewide fatalities increasing. You can look at every other state and you'll see that same trend line. You can actually go on the FHWA website. They've published all the performance measures. You can click on each individual state. And I've looked at several, and it's just a common theme nationwide with the fatality rates increasing. So this funding program is hugely popular and very competitive. And so that Knoxville was very fortunate to get the $8 million grant, and it came out of the regional roadway safety action plan we did and the supplemental plan that Knoxville had. So we did apply for implementation at the regional level. Unfortunately, those projects were not selected. Again, very competitive process. We did get additional planning funding to expand our plan for the entirety of Anderson County, as shown there on the bottom. So that's a $24,000 award. Again, we've identified this high injury network with that plan. These are the projects we applied for last time. There were 7 in Knox County, 1 in Oak Ridge, 1 Maryville. We had some other regional safety messaging and so forth. Those were not selected. We did have a debrief with Federal Highway as to why that was not awarded. And so the $1 billion is actually split into separate pots, $600 million for implementation and $400 million for planning and demonstration. And that is a set amount that they cannot shift the funding between each one. So there were $2.5 billion of applications for that $600 million piece. which again, so it shows how competitive that was. But on the flip side, the 400 million was undersubscribed. There were, a lot less planning funds applied for. So there's money available in that pot of money if we want to pursue that moving forward. So if there are other planning studies, supplements to our regional safety plan, there's things that we should look at applying for. We've heard the next round will open in February. There's not been an exact date announced. When it opens, it should be open for a 90-day period. So we'll get our group back together, and I'm sure we'll talk to the city and find other projects that we can submit for both implementation and planning, if that makes sense. So that's all I had on that. If there's any questions.
Anything for Mike? Okay, thank you. Next up, do we have any updates from our friends with the TDOT and FHWA, since we already kind of spoke with them once?
They may have one.
You have anything
I've
else?
got
John?
one or
Yes,
two
sir.
real quick things because we're over time. I'm going to cut most of them. The big thing is I wanted to congratulate Knoxville on the multimodal award, $1.125 million on that. Some more money coming in. And with the idea of funds and money, Federal Highway is, and the federal government is throwing money around, like was mentioned earlier. I mean, it is everywhere. We need to go out and get that money. Federal Highway, we're working with Federal Highway on providing some trainings on how to go get this money. So you all can get more involved with that one. So watch out for some more information on that after April. We'll make sure that you are very aware of that and the technical staffs are, because it's just like with our 10-year plan, we have money there, but if there's extra money out there that we can get in to throw on anything, we can help move these projects forward. And so we're focusing more on the how to get the money as well as what's already out there. So just keep an eye out for that.
Thank you.
I just had a couple of quick ones. The 11th edition of the MUTCD was released December 19th. So when you're thinking about these, active transportation projects, be sure to be referencing those designs. It's the most up to date. Then you mentioned the next round of Safe Streets for All is expected to be released in February. Then there is another program. We don't have a release date yet, but it is bike ped focused. It's called the Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment Program. Another discretionary grant program that we're expecting to be released sometime in late winter, early spring. So be on the lookout for that.
Great, thank you. Any questions for these gentlemen? Okay, thank you all. So on to other business. Does anyone have anything to discuss with the board?
Just want to quickly point out up there on the slide that we have some mobility, our first round of mobility plan meetings will be on February 12th and 13th, and we'll get you more information. We'll email that out to you.
Anybody else? Okay, I'd just like to say something really quickly. It's been a challenging 10 days with the storm, which turned into an anomalous weather event, really almost a once-in-a-century event with the amount of precipitation as well as cold temperatures. Here in Knox County, and I'm sure it's true across the region, our highway department has just been working extremely hard. They started brining the roads Saturday night. Some of them worked all the way through until Tuesday evening. And since then, they've been working from dawn to dusk, trying to clear the roads. And I know it's the same for everyone sitting at this table. So on behalf of this board, I'd just like to thank all of our highway departments and road crews and TDOT for the hard work that they have done in this, again, very unique weather event. So thank you to you all. So the next TPO Technical Committee meeting is Tuesday, February 13th at 9 a.m. here in this room. And then we also have an executive board meeting Wednesday, February 28th at 9 a.m. here in the small assembly room. Then moving on, now is public comment, and anyone from the public who would like to address this board has 5 minutes. Do we have anyone signed up? And seeing no one here, without objection, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you.